Good afternoon, student. This is Arindam Bag here, Department of English, Maharaja Nandakumar Mahavidyalaya. In my last presentation, I have provided you the summary from chapter 1 to chapter 7. Now, we will discuss about the next chapters which will start from chapter 8. So, let's move to that particular section. So this was the last slide which I used in my last presentation. Now this is the next section we are having here, and the story is developing in the following manner. So this is chapter 8. Enjoying the sisterly companionship of beloved, Denver sits on the bed and smiles as beloved dances. Denver questions beloved's name and her method of escaping the netherworld to see her mother's face once more. Denver begs beloved not to leave. Beloved retorts that it says whom she needs, not her sister. Denver tries to soothe beloved's outburst by retelling the story of how Amy Denver helped Seth give birth. Seth, instinctively wary of telling too much to a white woman who could easily turn in a runaway slave for a reward, had identified herself to Amy as Lou. Unburdened by race prejudice, Amy set about easing Seth's plan. She hummed as she performed primitive first aid to Seth's swollen feet and maimed back. She also fashioned slippers from pieces of Seth's shawl, which she filled with leaves. By noon, Amy and Seth had reached the Ohio River and located a boat with one oar. Water seeping into the boat threatened to engulf Seth in her birthing labor, but she succeeded in delivery on her fourth push. Amy wrapped the infant in her skirt, and the two women waded ashore. At twilight, Amy left, admonishing Seth to tell the child how Miss Amy Denver of Boston brought her into the world. Seth, relaxing into sleep, murmured the name Denver. But this is how beloved was born with the help of Denver. It is mentioned in chapter 8. Now, in chapter 9, the stabilizing influence of baby sharks seems far removed from the jarring news of Halley's bizarre splash in the butter churn. No longer anchored by the living presence of her loving mother-in-law, Seth recalls baby shark's admonition to abandon the past. In the clearing where baby sharks once preached, men, women, and children danced, sang, and celebrated the crippled old woman's healing love, herself defeated by a weak heart. A month after Seth arrived in Cincinnati, baby Suggs took to her bed, cursed bright colors, and blaming those white things, willed herself to die. Seth's mental journey returns her to Kentucky, Riverside, where Denver was born, and where Stampede fed Seth fried eel, and river water from his jar. Because fever gripped her body and dampened the baby, Stampede ordered his nephew to take off his jacket. In it, he swaddled the newborn Stampede, then ferried Seth across the Ohio to an earth-floored shack, marking the sty with a knotted white rag. Responding to the signal, Ella arrived with potatoes, a blanket, cloth, and a pair of men's shoes, which had to be split to accommodate Seth's swollen feet. Seth welcomed the news that her other three children had already arrived at their grandmother's house. Despite Ella's terse advice that she not love anything, Seth basked in the loving reception she received, and she and her newborn arrived at 124 Bluestone Road. She felt true comfort in Baby Suggs' gentle bathing and binding. Baby Suggs stitched a dress for dress for Seth to wear, and after rescuing Mrs. Garner's crystal earring from the hem of her old dress, discarded the garments she arrived in. Seth's older daughter delighted in the jingle of the earrings. Turning her thoughts to the present, Seth, accompanied by Denver and Beloved, reaches the clearing and ponders her doubts that Halle will never return. As she muses about the possibility of life with Poldy, Seth feels fingers closing around her neck and strangling her. Denver rushes to her aid. When Seth can breathe again, Beloved messages Seth's bruised flesh and kisses her. Denver halts the girl's assistance, but not before Seth momentarily recognizes the touch, which is identical to the touch she once felt from the 2-year-old ghost of her daughter. Reflecting further on Paul D's love, Seth understands Denver's needs for her sister. For a sister. Seth plans a tasty dinner for Paul D, who soaks in the tub and gestures to Seth to join him. Beloved arrives unseen and filled with jealousy goes back outside. Denver accuses Beloved of choking Seth and Beloved runs to the stream. Denver thinks about the time she spent when she was 7 attending Lady Jones School, where she made progress in reading and writing until Nelson Lord revealed the reason why never shunned her house. Didn't your mother get locked away for murder? Wasn't you in there with her when she went? 2 years after Nelson Lord drove her out of school. Denver first heard the sounds of the crawling baby ghost. The spirit's spiteful intrusion unnerved Denver's brothers to escape the oppressive atmosphere of 124. They left home after Denver's grandmothers died. Back in the present, Denver assesses how she can relieve her agonizing solitude. She turns to her sister, who crouches in the stream and watches two turtles mate. So this is what happens till chapter 9. Moving to the chapter 10, and we will discuss what's going on. Now it has been clear the activity of Beloved or the presence of Beloved is not very satisfactory, or rather sometimes people are worried about her activity, which includes Denver herself. Paul D relieves the savage treatment. This is chapter 9. Paul D relieves the savage treatment that he endured while shackled to 10 other slaves and transported to a brutal prison for the crime of threatening to kill Brandywine, the man who bought him from schoolteacher after the attempted escape from Sweet Home. From Kentucky through Virginia and on to Alfred, Georgia, to the underground cell that housed him, Paul D struggled against the despair and dehumanization that accompany forced labor. For example, each morning the white guards forced the chained row of black men down on their knees, and a few men were chosen to perform oral sex on the guards before beginning the grueling day. Chained in one long line of 46 convicts, Paul D learned the nuisances of wordless gesture and expression and mourned his captivity in song. 86 days into his sentence, Paul D and the other prisoners, chained together and threatened with suffocation under a mudslide, dived beneath their cells, restraining bars, and escaped. The prisoners fled to a Cherokee camp where Native Americans fed them mush and released them from their leg irons. The scent of their trail was downed in mud, preventing dogs from tracking them. Secure for the moment, the survivors discussed alternatives. Paul D was the last to make a move. A month after his escape, he headed north and was taken in by a Delaware weaver lady. So this is happens till chapter 10. Now we will be moving to chapter 11. You will see the novel is going forward and backward. It has the tenacity, or it has the tendency to go back. That means people remember their past and they are also in their present. So both of them, that means the story is going forward and backward simultaneously. In chapter 11 we find, even as Paul defined himself falling in love with Seth, he feels explicably compelled to distance herself from her without knowing why. He stopped sleeping in Seth's bed, moving first to a rocking chair for a few nights, then to baby Suck's double bed, and then to storeroom. Finally, he stops sleeping in the house completely and creates a meager nest for himself in the cold house behind the main house. During this time, he and Seth continue to have sex and maintain their deepened relationship. However, Paul D believes that beloved is somehow preventing him from being able to sleep in Seth's bed. This happens in chapter 11. One autumn night, beloved seeks him out and demands that he touch her on the inside part and call me my name. Although she promises to leave after he repeats her name, she instead forces herself on him. So here we realize Paul D actually started to feel uneasy in 124 with the presence of beloved. So previously he used to sleep with Seth, then to the rocking chair next to baby Suggs, and then in the storeroom, and at the end we already found that in chapter 11 he was actually sleeping at the back of the house. So there it has been clear that beloved uh, attempted, or rather beloved seduced Paul D, and they had sex to fully isolate him to Seth. So this is beloved's conspiracy, this is beloved's activity, so that Paul D and Seth may have some sort of mental distance, and Paul D will suffer from the sense of guilt. So, beloved did this, beloved seduced Paul D. So, this was the reason Paul D already got this idea that something is not right with beloved. The way she behaves, the way she does work, it was not very clear, or her actions wasn't was full of suspicion. So that's why Paul D was not very comfortable with the character beloved. Though Paul D himself provided shelter to beloved, but later on it appears that beloved was creating a problem between Paul D and Seth. So this happens. So in chapter 12, Denver feels content with the intimacy that she shares with her phantom sister. Beloved, however, does not share Denver's contentment and continues to press for some unnamed fulfillment. Seth questions Beloved about her mother, her relationship with whites, and her clothes, but Beloved provides unsubstantial replies. She remembers only the bridge and one white man. Seth concludes that Beloved must have been locked away by a lecherous white male who abused her. So, the relationship between Denver and Beloved, it's something different, where Beloved is trying to portray a picture about her past, but she is not giving the details. So Denver is assuming things. Denver remains convinced that Beloved is the ghost that once haunted 124 earlier, and she conceals from Seth the fact that Beloved is now Paul D's lover. Beloved is now Paul D's lover. Denver's daily discourse with Beloved is limited to discussion of their shores, neighbors, and family. By winter, Denver is consumed with the task of holding Beloved's interest. One day, the two girls enter the shed for cider and the door bangs shut. In the dark, Denver weeps because he fears that Beloved has returned to the other side, leaving Denver with no self. Like a spoiled, manipulative toddler, Beloved reappears and smiles at Denver's clutch on her hem. Suddenly, Beloved points, but Denver sees nothing. Beloved curls up, closes her eyes, and rocks. Denver, failing to understand, asks if Beloved is right. Beloved directs her gaze to the darkness, telling Denver that she will find Beloved's face there, but Denver sees nothing. So, this is what happens till chapter 12. I am ending this presentation over here. We will continue, or I am going to create another presentation which will complete uh, the summary of chapter 13 to 18. So thank you for watching.